He is hungry. Right now, today, wherever he is hungry. Not for food, not for her, not for anything he has a name for. He is hungry in a place so deep that the hunger has no address he can point to, no craving he can identify, no satisfaction he has been able to locate no matter how many places he has looked. And he has been looking. That is the thing you may not have fully understood yet. The thing that looks from the outside like contentment, like a man who has found what he was looking for and settled into it, is not contentment at all. It is a man who is perpetually, increasingly, quietly starving. And what he is starving for has a specific shape. A shape that was carved into his soul before he was born, before he met you, before he made the promise at the altar that he has since been trying to live around rather than inside. The shape was carved by God. For you. Specifically. Only. And the woman he is with cannot fill it. Not because she is less, not because she is insufficient as a person, but because the shape is not hers. The hunger was not designed for her. And every day he spends trying to feed it with the wrong thing. The hunger grows louder. The void grows wider. Until the day comes. And Padre Pio said this with the authority of man who had watched it happen in the souls of men he read like open books. Until the day comes when the hunger becomes the loudest thing in him. Louder than the justifications. Louder than the comfort of the new life. Louder than everything he has built to muffle it. And on that day, he will know. He will know what he has been starving for. He will know where the filling is. And he will turn toward it with everything he has left. But here is what most women do not know. Here is what Padre Pio said almost no one teaches, almost no confessor explains, almost no woman in your situation has ever been told. The hunger does not grow on its own. It is fed, not by what he is doing. What he is doing muffles it temporarily and then makes it worse. It is fed by you, by your prayer, by the specific spiritual nourishment that travels through what Padre Pio called the covenant channel. The living, open, unbreakable connection between a husband and wife that remains active even in infidelity, even across distance, even through years of his choices to ignore it. That channel does not close when a marriage is in crisis. It cannot be closed. It was opened by God at the altar, and only God can close it. And while it is open, which is always, as long as the marriage exists, prayer sent through it reaches the husband's soul in a way that no other prayer can reach it. Not around the outside. Not through ordinary spiritual channels. Directly into the specific place in him that was shaped for you, and that only you can fill. Your prayer, prayed through the covenant channel, is the most direct nourishment to the hunger in your husband's soul that exists on earth. And Padre Pio left a specific prayer for doing exactly this, for feeding the hunger from a distance, through the covenant channel, until the hunger becomes loud enough that your husband can no longer ignore which direction the filling is coming from. That prayer is what I'm going to give you today. Every word of it. But first I need you to understand the hunger. Because a prayer aimed at what you fully understand is 10 times more powerful than a prayer aimed at what you have only partially grasped. And the hunger, its nature, its origin, its intensification, is something Padre Pio explained with a precision that changes everything. But before anything else, before the teaching and before the prayer, I want us to do something together right now. Write in the comments these words, "Feed the hunger, Lord." Write it as a prayer for your husband. Write it as a declaration that you understand something today that you did not understand before. That the void in him is not a void that anyone else can fill, that the hunger was designed for you and you alone, that the spiritual channel between you is still open and your prayer is still reaching him even now. Write "Feed the Hunger, Lord," and write his name beside it. Just the first name. Because Padre Pio intercedes from heaven over every name that is brought to him with the sincerity of a wife who refuses to stop fighting for her marriage. Write it now, and then come back. Because the first thing I'm going to tell you about the nature of this hunger is going to change the way you understand your husband. Not excuse him, understand him. And understanding is the ground from which the most powerful prayer is always prayed. The teaching begins with something Padre Pio said to a group of women. A small group, a gathering of women whose marriages were in various states of crisis, who had come to San Giovanni Rotondo together and whom he agreed to speak to briefly after Massachusetts. And what he said to them, recorded by the woman who organized that gathering, preserved in her written account of the day, was this. He said, "I want to tell you something about your husbands that you do not know. Something that I see when I look at the soul of a man who has left his wife or who is living divided. I see hunger, not the hunger of a man who has not yet found what he is looking for. The hunger of a man who has found it and is standing 20 feet away from it and cannot see it because he is looking in the wrong direction. He is hungry for exactly what he has. He does not know that yet, but the hunger is accurate. The hunger knows. The hunger is aimed correctly even when the man is not. In your prayer, the prayer of the wife who understands what the hunger is really for, your prayer is what turns him around. Not arguments, not ultimatums, not the collision of his choices with their consequences, though that collision will come. Your prayer, because your prayer, prayed through the bond that God placed between you, is the only thing that can speak directly to the hunger in a language it recognizes. And when the hunger hears the language it was made to hear, it becomes impossible to ignore. The hunger knows. It is aimed correctly even when the man is not. And your prayer speaks to it in a language it recognizes. Hold that. We're going to build everything else from it. Now, the nature of the hunger itself. Padre Pio described it in specific terms that are unlike the way most people in the church talk about this subject. He did not describe it as loneliness or regret or nostalgia. He described it as something more active, more present, more physical in its spiritual quality. He said, "The hunger I am describing is not the hunger of absence, not the hollow feeling that comes from something being missing. It is the hunger of proximity, the hunger of a man who is near the filling but not allowing himself to be filled. And that hunger is more acute, not less than the hunger of absence. The man who is far from his wife and has accepted the separation feels the hunger as a background ache, present but manageable, something he has learned to live around. But the man who is near his wife, who sees her, who speaks with her occasionally, who sleeps in the same house or walks past her photograph or hears her name spoken by his children, that man feels the hunger as something close to pain, because the filling is near and he is refusing it. And the soul does not tolerate proximity to its provision without response. The closer he is, the louder the hunger speaks, which is why men in this situation who are still in the same house, who have not physically left, but who are emotionally and spiritually elsewhere, are often in the most acute spiritual distress of any group. Not the most dramatic distress, the most acute, the most constant, the most impossible to anesthetize completely, the hunger of proximity. The man who is near the filling and refusing it is in more acute spiritual distress than the man who is left entirely. I want you to hear that, not as a tool to use against your husband, but as information that changes the way you pray. Because a man in acute spiritual distress is a man whose soul is loudly, urgently, constantly reaching for relief. And your prayer, aimed directly at that reaching, speaking into the hunger in the language it recognizes, lands in a soul that is already straining toward it. There was a woman who came to Padre Pio, a woman in her mid-40s, 12 years of marriage, 2 children, a husband who had not physically left, but who had, over the course of 2 years, moved so completely out of the marriage in every interior sense that she said their conversations were the conversations of acquaintances. Their shared space was the shared space of people who happen to live in the same building. And the only evidence that they were still technically married was the legal document and the fact that he still came home at night. He was present and completely absent simultaneously. And this woman, who had tried everything she could think of, who had been through the kind of conversations that go nowhere and leave both people feeling worse than before the conversation, who had prayed and begged and reasoned and in moments of desperation screamed. This woman came to Padre Pio and said, "Father, he is right there. He is in the same room with me every evening, and I cannot reach him. It is like shouting at a man behind soundproof glass. I can see him. He can see me, and nothing is getting through. How do I reach a man who is right there and completely unreachable?" And Padre Pio said, and this is the line from her testimony that every woman who has heard this story says stayed with her. He said, "You are trying to reach him through the glass. Stop. The channel between you does not go through the glass. It goes underneath the glass. It goes through a place he cannot seal or soundproof or choose to close. It goes through the covenant, and the covenant is still open. Pray through the covenant, not at him, through the channel that connects you to him at a level below his conscious choices. And what you send through that channel will reach him in the place where the hunger lives. And the hunger will hear it, even if he does not. Pray through the covenant channel. That is what the prayer I am about to give you does. It is not a prayer that asks God to make your husband do something. It is a prayer that sends nourishment, specific spiritual nourishment, directly through the covenant channel into the place in your husband where the hunger lives. And it sends it in layers, because the hunger has layers. Padre Pio identified 4 distinct layers of the hunger, 4 distinct things the hunger is reaching for that the void in your husband's soul is starving for, and the prayer addresses each one. He called them the 4 hungers: the hunger for home, the hunger for truth, the hunger for his own soul, and the hunger for God. 4 hungers, each one deeper than the one before, each one more fundamental, each one more precisely the thing that no other woman can provide, and that the filling he has been seeking in the wrong place cannot touch. And the prayer sends nourishment to each one, through the channel, through the covenant, directly into the place in him that was shaped for exactly this provision. That is the prayer, and that is what we are going to pray. But I need to tell you something about the covenant channel before we pray, because there is a misconception that will undermine the prayer if it goes uncorrected. The misconception is this, that the covenant channel, if it exists, goes both ways, that if you can send prayer through it, then his choices, his infidelity, his emotional absence are also coming back through it and affecting you. Women who hear about the covenant channel sometimes feel a new fear that being spiritually connected to a man who is doing what he is doing is dangerous for them. And Padre Pio addressed this directly. He said, "The covenant channel carries what the covenant wife sends. It is directed by the faithful spouse, and the faithful spouse directs it always toward grace, toward the prayer, toward the nourishment, toward what she is intentionally sending for the healing of the man she is praying for. What comes from him through the channel is not his sin. It is his hunger. His hunger comes through the channel and it reaches you. And you have been feeling it, though you may not have named it as that. The restlessness you feel, the sense that something is urgently unresolved that cannot be resolved by anything you do. The inexplicable pull toward a man who has been giving you every reason to release him. That is not weakness. That is the covenant channel. His hunger reaching you because you are the provision for it. And the prayer I am going to teach you takes that hunger, which you feel, which reaches you through the channel, and sends it back to him transformed. Transformed by grace. Transformed by the prayer that wraps it in the intention of his healing. You receive his hunger and you return it to him as nourishment. That is what the covenant wife does. That is the specific spiritual work that only she can do. You receive his hunger and you return it to him as nourishment. That is the image. That is the prayer. And I want to pause here because we are at the moment in this video where I need to ask you something. If you have been watching this series, if you have been fighting for your marriage through these videos, through these prayers, through the nights when everything in you wanted to stop, but you prayed anyway, I want to make sure you do not miss a single teaching that is coming. Because this is not the last of what Padre Pio left for women in your situation. There are teachings ahead about the specific signs the hunger produces in a husband as it intensifies, behaviors that most wives misread completely, that look like indifference but are actually the opposite. There are prayers for specific stages of the crisis that are different from the prayers for other stages. There is a teaching about what happens in the husband's soul in the 24 hours before he finally speaks the truth. All of it is on this channel. Subscribe now and hit the bell. Do not miss what is coming. The bell means I can reach you on the specific night when the specific video is exactly what you need. Subscribe, hit the bell, and then stay. Because the prayer is almost here. And the 4 hungers need to be fully understood before you pray them. Because you will pray each one better when you know exactly what you are feeding. The first hunger, the hunger for home. This is the most surface of the 4 hungers. The most immediately recognizable. And in one sense the most misunderstood because most people, including most men, interpret this hunger as nostalgia. A sentimental reaching for the past, for the comfortable and familiar, for what was easier before things got complicated. Padre Pio said that interpretation is wrong. He said, the hunger for home is not nostalgia. Nostalgia is about the past. The hunger for home is about the present, about the particular shape of presence that a marriage creates, the specific texture of being known and being home that cannot be manufactured in any other arrangement. The man who has left his marriage, or who is living inside it, but has exited from it in every interior sense, feels the absence of that specific texture in everything he touches. The new relationship does not have it. It cannot. It is new. It does not yet know him in the way that years of marriage know a man, in the way that his wife knows the sound of his breathing when he is worried, the specific expression he wears when something has humiliated him, the history of every failure and every recovery, the full context of a person that only time together can build. That knowing, that specific, irreplaceable, years-built knowing, is what the hunger for home is reaching for. And the other woman, however willing she is, however present and attentive, cannot provide it, because she does not yet know him. And what she does not yet know, she cannot fill. The hunger for home is the hunger for the wife who knows. The wife who knows. That is the first hunger, and the prayer for its sins through the covenant channel. The specific spiritual nourishment of being known, of the years, of the history, of the full context that only you carry. The second hunger, the hunger for truth. This hunger is quieter than the first and more dangerous. Padre Pio said it was the hunger most often mistaken for something else entirely, mistaken for dissatisfaction, for the general restlessness of a man who has not found what he is looking for the philosophical discontent of someone who is searching without knowing for what. He said, "The hunger for truth in a man who is living a divided life is specific and constant. He is living inside a story about himself, about his choices, about why what he is doing is acceptable or at least understandable or at least not as bad as the full truth would make it. And he knows the story is not true. Some part of him knows it, not the part he shows to the world. That part is committed to the story. But the part that lies awake at 3 in the morning, the part that winces when his children look at him, the part that feels the distance between the man he is performing and the man he actually is, that part is hungry for the truth in the specific way that a person who has been living in poor air is hungry for clean air. Not with the intellectual desire for something philosophical, but with the body's desperate need for something real. The hunger for truth is the hunger to stop performing. And the only place a man stops performing is in the presence of the person who already knows the truth about him, his wife. Not because she has confronted him with it. Confrontation produces defense, not relief. But because she holds it, she knows who he actually is, what he has actually done, what the true story is, and she is still here. In her presence, holding the truth and still present, is the most powerful invitation to truth-telling that exists. The hunger for truth is fed by the witness of the wife who knows the truth and has not left. The wife who knows the truth and has not left. Your continued presence, your continued prayer, your refusal to release the marriage is itself nourishment to the second hunger, and the prayer sends it through the channel. The third hunger, the hunger for his own soul. This is the deepest of the first 3 hungers and the one that surprises women most when Padre Pio describes it. Because it is not a hunger directed at the wife at all. Not directly. It is a hunger directed at the man himself. At who he was. At who he knows, in the most honest part of himself, he was created to be. Padre Pio described it this way. And this description is from a letter he wrote to a priest who had asked him to explain the spiritual dynamic of a man who keeps returning to what he knows is wrong. The man in this situation is not only losing his marriage, he is losing himself. Every choice he makes that takes him further from the covenant, takes him further from the man God created him to be. Not in a dramatic, theatrical way, in a quiet, accumulating way that departure from one's created purpose always works. He wakes up each morning slightly less recognizable to himself than he was the morning before. And because he cannot see the source of the loss clearly, because the story he is living in prevents him from naming it accurately, he experiences it as a general hunger, a hunger for himself, for the man he was before all of this, for the clarity and the integrity and the specific weight of being someone who is living inside their calling rather than running from it. And the wife who chose him, who has been carrying the covenant, who in her faithfulness to the promise represents the life he was called to. The wife is the only person in his life who holds his original self with any clarity, because she knew him in the original, because she chose him when he was still the man he was created to be. The hunger for his own soul is, in its deepest expression, a hunger for the woman who knew him then and has never stopped knowing him. The woman who knew him then and has never stopped knowing him. You are that woman. And the prayer for the third hunger sends through the channel the specific nourishment of being seen as the man he was and was always meant to be, not as the man he has been lately. The fourth hunger, the hunger for God. This is the deepest and the last. And Padre Pio said it is the hunger that all the others are, at their root, expressions of. He said, when I look past the hunger for home, past the hunger for truth, past the hunger for his own soul, I find this. The God-shaped hunger. The hunger that was placed in every human soul at creation and that nothing in the created order can fill. Not a wife, not a marriage, not even the most beautiful and faithful human love. Only God fills this hunger completely. But here is what almost no one understands about this hunger in the specific situation of a man who has broken his covenant. The covenant was one of God's primary instruments for leading this man toward the filling of the God-shaped hunger. God designed the covenant, the self-giving, the fidelity, the daily choice to love beyond what feels natural, as a school in which the man would learn, step by step, the kind of love that prepares a soul for God. And when the man walked away from the covenant, he walked away from the school, not from the hunger. The hunger for God does not go away. It only finds misdirected expressions, but from the school that was teaching him how to satisfy it. And the result is a man who is hungrier for God than he has ever been and further from the path that leads there than he has ever been simultaneously. The wife's prayer for the fourth hunger does not directly give her husband God. Only God gives God. But her prayer, sent through the covenant channel, reopens the path. It clears the road. It removes enough of the debris that the man can begin, if he chooses, to walk back toward the school, back toward the covenant, back toward the life that was designed all along to be the path that led him home, not just to his wife, but to everything. Now the prayer Padre Pio gave for feeding the four hungers through the covenant channel. He structured it around what he called the four sendings, one sending for each hunger. Each one prayed in the awareness of the specific provision being sent. He said, you are not asking God to do something for your husband. You are cooperating with what God is already doing. The covenant channel is already open. The grace is already moving. Your prayer is how you intentionally direct what is already moving, how you send what the hunger needs through the channel that God already established. You are not the source. You're the sender, and an intentional sender, cooperating with God's already present grace, accelerates what grace is already doing. The opening, prayed every time before every sending. Find your place of prayer. If you have a wedding photograph, hold it or place it before you. This is the prayer of a covenant wife, sending through a living covenant. Stand or sit. Whatever posture helps you feel the solidity of where you stand. And say this, Lord God, I stand before you today as the covenant wife. The channel between me and my husband is open. You opened it and it has never been closed. I come to this channel today, not with my pain, not with my need, not with my desperation, though all of those are real and you know them completely. I come with intention. I come to send. I ask you to receive what I am about to place in this channel and carry it through to the place in my husband where it is needed most. Let the covenant work the way you designed it to work. Let what I send reach where it is aimed. And Lord, fill me first with what I am about to send, so that what reaches him is genuinely from you and not merely for my need. Fill me, and then let me send. Begin. The first sending, the sending for the hunger for home. After the opening, place yourself in the awareness of everything you know about your husband. Not the defensive husband, not the man of recent choices, the man you know, the full man. And pray this: Lord, I send through the covenant channel the nourishment of home. I send my husband everything I know about him, the knowing that only years can build, the specific and irreplaceable knowledge of who he is that no one else carries. I send him the memory of being known fully, of having someone who knows the sound of his silence when something is wrong, who holds the full context of his history, who knew him before the performances and the defenses and the story he is living in now. Lord, let him feel through the channel what it is to be known like that. Not as a sentimental memory, as a present reality, as the specific texture of a home that is still here, still holding his place, still carrying the shape of him. Let the hunger for home hear this sending and recognize it. Let it say, even at a level below his conscious awareness, this is the filling. This is what I have been hungry for. This is the direction. Send it through, Lord, through the covenant channel, to the exact place in him where the hunger lives. And let it land. The second sending, the sending for the hunger for truth. Pray this: Lord, I send through the covenant channel the nourishment of truth. Not the truth that condemns my husband, the truth that invites him. The truth that says, you are known here. Not the performed version of you. Not the story you have been living in. The actual you, the man who knows what he is doing and carries the weight of knowing, who has been performing fine while the weight accumulates. I send him the specific relief of being with someone who already knows, who does not need the performance, who holds the truth about him without using it against him. Lord, let him feel through the channel the relief of being seen truthfully and loved anyway. Not loved in spite of the truth, loved in full possession of it. Let the hunger for truth feel this sending. Let it recognize the specific relief of clean air after the suffocating work of maintaining the story. Let the sending reach the part of him that is most exhausted by the performing, the part that would give anything for a single honest moment. And let it say, here. Honesty is here. Truth is here. You can stop performing here. Send it through, Lord, through the channel, and let it reach him where the pretending is most costly. The third sending, the sending for the hunger for his own soul. This is the most tender sending. Pray this: Lord, I send through the covenant channel the nourishment of his original self. I hold before you, in my prayer, in my intention, in the specific love I have carried for this man across all the years of knowing him. I hold the man he was before any of this happened, the man he was when he was most himself, the moments when I saw in him clearly who you created him to be, not an idealization, the real man in his specific glory and his specific weakness, in the particular combination of gifts and struggles that is uniquely him. I hold that man, and I send the knowing of him, the specific recognition of his original self through the covenant channel. Lord, let him feel recognized, not as the man he has been recently, as the man he was made to be. Let the hunger for himself hear this sending and recognize its own name being spoken. Let him feel through the channel what it is to be seen as he was, and as he still is beneath everything he has buried that truth under. And Lord, in that feeling of being recognized, let something in him reach back. Let the original man, the one who is still there, still intact beneath the choices and the story and the defended surface, let him reach toward the recognition. Let him want to be that man again. Let the wanting be the beginning of the turning. Pause here, a real pause. Let the third sending settle before you move to the fourth, because the fourth hunger is the deepest and it deserves to be arrived at with the full weight of what preceded it. The fourth sending, the sending for the hunger for God. Pray this: Lord, I send through the covenant channel the most important nourishment of all. I send my husband back toward you, not toward me, toward you. Because I understand now, I understand what Padre Pio taught, that the path back to me runs through the path back to you. That the covenant was always a school, and the hunger it was designed to feed was always, at its deepest level, the hunger for you. So Lord, I do not pray tonight only for my husband's return to me. I pray for his return to you. I ask you to let the covenant channel, still open, still active, still carrying what the faithful spouse sends through it, carry to my husband's soul the specific pull of the life he was created for, not the performance of faith, the real thing, the weight of a relationship with you that was always more honest and more demanding and more alive than anything the comfortable story has been offering him. Lord, let him feel through the channel the specific hunger that only you can fill, and let him feel simultaneously the direction of the filling, not away from the marriage, through it, back toward the covenant, back toward the school, back toward the path that leads to you and that has always run through the faithful love of the wife who is still here, still praying, still sending through the channel, even on the days when everything in her is exhausted and the prayer is more stubborn than faithful. Lord, send through the covenant channel the clearest possible invitation. Come home to me, and in coming home, come home to yourself. And in coming home to yourself, come home to God. All one motion, all one homecoming. Lord, send it, and let the fourth hunger recognize it and pull him toward it with everything it has. Then close every sending with this, the same closing every time. Padre Pio, you saw the four hungers in the souls of men who came to your confessional. Men who described their situation in human terms, but whose souls you read in the language of eternity. You knew exactly what they were hungry for before they finished speaking. Look at my husband today with those same eyes. See his hungers. See exactly which one is loudest today, which one is closest to the surface, which one is most ready to be reached. And send through your intercession the specific grace that feeds it. You know what is needed with a precision I do not have. Intercede with that precision. And Mary, mother of the man who fed thousands with 5 loaves and 2 fish, who understands that God's provision for a deep hunger is always more than sufficient, always exactly right, always arrive at the exact moment of greatest need. Pray with me. Cover the covenant channel. Protect what I am sending through it, and let it reach him. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen. That is the prayer. The 4 sendings. Pray today. Pray tomorrow. Pray it on the days when the hunger seems too abstract to aim at, when your husband seems too defended to be reachable, when the channel seems too invisible to trust. Because the channel is not invisible to God, and the hunger is not abstract. It is the most concrete spiritual reality in your husband's soul right now. And the prayer you have just prayed, aimed at the specific hunger, sent through the specific channel, carrying the specific nourishment of the wife who knows and who is still here, that prayer has landed. In the invisible, in the place below the defended surface, in the place where the hunger lives. And Padre Pio said, a hunger that has been fed once through the covenant channel has been reminded of what feeding actually feels like. And once reminded, it intensifies. It grows louder. It becomes less and less possible to ignore or to feed with substitutes. And eventually, Not on a timeline you control, but on a timeline the hunger controls, which is the same as a timeline God controls. Eventually, the hunger leads him home. Now I want to speak to you about something that Padre Pio said every woman who prays this prayer needs to understand about the time between the first sending and the visible return. He called it the hunger's ascent. He said, when you begin to send through the covenant channel, the hunger, which has been held down below the surface by the weight of the story the man is living in, begins to rise. It rises slowly at first, then faster as the sendings continue. And as it rises, it produces effects in the man's behavior and in the quality of his presence that the wife will notice if she knows what to look for. The first effect is a change in his silences. The silences that were previously flat, the silences of a man who has gone somewhere else internally, begin to carry weight. A heaviness, a quality of someone who is thinking about something he is not saying. The wife who has been praying notices this before she can name it. She feels the difference in the quality of the air when he is quiet. The second effect is what Padre Pio called the involuntary return of attention. The man who has been carefully directing his attention away from his wife, carefully not seeing her, carefully not registering her presence in the room, carefully maintaining the distance that the story requires, begins, in unguarded moments, to look, not purposely, involuntarily. The hunger rising pulls his attention in the direction of the feeding before the defended mind can stop it. And the wife will catch him looking, in a way that is different from the looking she has grown accustomed to, different in its quality, in its weight, in the specific expression that accompanies it. It is the expression of a man who has seen something he was not expecting to see. The third effect, and this is the one Padre Pio said is the most significant and the most commonly missed, is a change in the way he speaks to the children. A softness that was not there before. A presence. As if something in him is beginning to re-enter the life he has been living beside, rather than inside. Watch for these three things. The weighted silences, the involuntary attention, the change with the children. These are the hunger's ascent. These are the signs that the sendings are reaching the place they were aimed at. And when you see them, receive them quietly. Do not name them. Do not press on them. Do not say, I noticed you looked at me differently, or you seem to be thinking about something. Simply receive the signs with the interior awareness of a woman who knows what they mean. And keep sending, because the ascent is not yet complete. The hunger is on its way up. Keep sending until it breaks the surface. There was a woman, and this story is one I have heard told by multiple people who were close to this family, in enough consistent detail that I trust the core of it completely. A woman who had been praying the 4 sendings for 11 weeks. 11 weeks of daily prayer through the covenant channel. And for 10 of those weeks, she had seen nothing that she could identify as the hunger's ascent. Her husband was as distant as ever. The silences were flat. The attention was directed everywhere but toward her. And on the 11th week, on a Thursday evening, by her specific recollection, she was in the kitchen after the children were in bed, and her husband came in for a glass of water, which was nothing remarkable, which happened every evening. And she was standing at the sink with her back to him, and she heard him stop. Not the normal stop of a man reaching past her for a glass. A different stop. A stillness. And she did not turn around. She stayed at the sink. And after a moment that she said felt longer than it was, he said, and she said she had not heard him speak in that particular voice in so long she had almost forgotten it existed. He said, "You still use that soap." He was talking about the dish soap, the specific brand she had always used. A completely unremarkable thing. And she knew the way the woman at the sink knows things without turning around. that it was not about the soap, that what he was really saying, in the only language available to a man whose hunger was surfacing for the first time in 11 weeks of sendings, was, "I recognize this. I recognize you. I recognize home." She said nothing. She nodded slightly, and he got his glass of water and left the kitchen. But she stood at the sink for a long time after, not crying, perfectly still, feeling the specific quality of what had just passed through the room. And she said later, "I did not know what would come next. I did not know if that was the beginning of something or just a moment. But I knew what it was. It was the hunger speaking. It was the sending reaching him. It was the first word of a sentence he had not yet finished, but had finally begun. The first word of a sentence not yet finished, but finally begun. That is what the prayer produces. Not always dramatically. Often in the most ordinary moments, a brand of dish soap, a tone of voice, a particular way of looking at the children. The hunger surfacing speaks in the language of the ordinary. Watch for the ordinary. It is where the extraordinary is hiding. Lord, I bring before you today every husband whose hunger has been rising toward the surface. Every man who is living inside the performance of contentment, while something deep in him is increasingly, urgently, insistently hungry for what only his wife can provide. Lord, you designed that hunger. You placed it in him with a specific shape and a specific address and a specific filling that you prepared from the moment you decided these two people would make a covenant. The hunger knows where the filling is. The channel is open. And there are wives today who are sending through that channel with the faithfulness of women who refuse to stop believing in what God designed. Lord, receive every sending. Carry it through the channel to the exact place in each husband where it is most needed. Let land. Let the hunger recognize it. Let the ascent begin or continue in those who have already felt the first signs. And let the first word of the unfinished sentence be spoken. In kitchens, in car rides, in moments of weighted silence. In whatever form it takes. In whatever ordinary disguise the extraordinary chooses to wear. May Padre Pio, who saw the four hungers in thousands of souls and who spent his life teaching wives how to feed them through the covenant channel, intercede today over every sending that has been prayed. Let the hungers be fed. Let the sentences be finished. And let every woman who prayed today be standing at her own sink on her own Thursday evening when the first word finally comes. Amen. Write in the comments before you close this video. Write, "I am sending through the channel." Or write which of the four hungers feels most urgent for your husband. Home, truth, his own soul, or God. I want to know where you are. I want to pray specifically for the hunger that is most ready to be reached. And if this framework gave you something new today, if the four hungers gave you language for something you've been watching in your husband but could not name, if the covenant channel gave you a way to understand how your prayer reaches him even when nothing seems to be getting through, leave a like. Because that like carries this framework to another woman tonight who has been praying into what feels like silence and who needs to understand that the channel is open and her prayer is landing even when she cannot feel it landing. Share this video on WhatsApp, on your page, with the woman whose marriage is in crisis and who has been told that nothing can be done. Tell her the channel is open. Tell her Padre Pio said, "The hunger knows where the filling is." And in the next video, I'm going to reveal the specific moment Padre Pio said, "The hunger breaks the surface completely." The moment the man can no longer hold it below the performance. What that moment looks like. What the wife must do and must not do in that specific window. Because that window is the most important window in the entire restoration. And if you're sending through the channel, you are building toward it right now. Subscribe, hit the bell, and I will see you there.